I do not know if you guys have heard this story, but I think it needs more attention. This is in reference to Justice Democrats. Now, Daniel Lippman is the journalist that broke this story. So Daniel Lippman said, big scoop here. Justice Democrats, the progressive PAC that made waves in recent years by helping new generation lefty candidates run against more establishment Dems, laid off 9 of its 20 employees this week as the organization faces a major financial crunch. And we are about to get into this because I hate to say that I told you so. But I told you so. I told you that if the progressives or regressives, we call them here, if they actually didn't start doing these things that they said they were going to do in reference to fighting for progressive issues, if they didn't stop siding with people like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, that the excitement for Justice Democrats, candidates and politicians was going to go away, was going to eventually disappear. And so I want to get into the article here. Just want to make sure I went to the right spot. Here it is. Because this is in Politico. Now listen to this. Major layoffs at Justice Democrats. Justice Democrats, the progressive PAC that made waves in recent years by helping new generation lefty candidates run against more establishment Dems, laid off 9 of its 20 employees this week as the organization faces a major financial crunch. That's coming from Daniel Lippman. It is no secret that Democratic and progressive organizations like us are in a difficult fundraising environment right now. Now, that statement is coming from Justice Democrats Executive Director Alexandra Rojas. I'll show you who she is in just a second, but remember, she was actually the one that agreed with Neera Tanden being added to committees. Remember this? Remember this whole outcry? Why would she be agreeing with Neera Tanden? Okay, let's go on. The group also separately lost its top spokesperson, Waleed Shahid, who left after 6 years and said in a tweet that he was proud to have played a role in building one of the most impactful democratic and progressive organizations from scratch. Shahid is joining the board of the organization as he figures out his next steps. Now, this is one of its top spokespeople. He left on his own. Okay, separately lost. So he's not one of the ones that was laid off. So forget what he said in the tweet. He left on his own. They lost 9 out of 20. They laid off 9 people out of 20. That's almost half. Now, let's take a look at the Justice Democrat. Look, the first thing you see when you go to the website is this. Money, chip in now. The first thing you see. We're electing the next generation of progressive leaders. And then here are the people that they have here. And you know, they all have sold us out, right? The squad. First thing you see, give me money. Now let's click off of here. About Justice Democrats. So you see Ayanna Pressley. You'll see the mission statement. We need a Democratic Party that fights for its voters, not big corporate donors. Have they been doing that? No. They became scabs. They voted against the railroad workers. They voted to send billions of dollars to Nazis in Ukraine. They wouldn't force the vote for Medicare for all at a time when we were in a pandemic and people really needed it. But that's part of the mission statement. Our goal is to build a mission-driven caucus in Congress by electing more leaders like AOC and Jamal Bowman, who will represent our communities in Congress and fight for bold progressive solutions to our current crisis. But they haven't been doing that. Notice what they did here too. They mentioned AOC and Jamal Bowman, right? You know this is on purpose. Let me make sure I mention a woman of color and one of the black politicians. Since we mentioned the woman, let's mention the man. Because let's be real. I told you guys before, Jamal Bowman is the weakest link when you look at the squad. Now, if we go on, what we do, Justice Democrats is recruiting and support of progressive Democrats all over the country, starting with Congress. We're working to transform the Democratic Party while building independent power. What independent power? They don't even do this. Why would you donate to them? We do this by running primary challenges against out-of-touch Democratic incumbents and organizing to hold the party accountable to our issues. What organizing has been done? All the organizing has been happening on the outside, the grassroots. And the majority of the time, they don't participate. Where were they for the Medicare for All marches? The only one that showed up was Cori Bush and complained that she didn't agree with what was being done. What organizing has been done, guys? Let's go on. Who we are. Justice Democrats is a federal political action committee, a PAC, powered by grassroots donations. Let's stop right there. That part isn't even true anymore. We all know, we went over this multiple times. George Soros gives money to Justice Democrats. They started taking billionaire money. And this goes all the way back to before AOC actually won. They realized, oh, we need to raise more money quickly. They started taking billionaire money. Same thing with the Sunrise Movement. Should have never taken money from George Soros. Why are you taking money from billionaires? So that's not even true. We're all grassroots. The PAC uses donation money to hire staff who recruit and train candidates, develop communications, organizing, and digital strategies to drive progressive policies and candidates forward. How have the policies been driven forward, though? Because on the national level, there's no progressive policies that have been passed on the national level. Locally, some have. But not on the national level. They've been voting along with Nancy Pelosi, agreeing with Joe Biden, endorsing Joe Biden. How are you pushing progressive candidates forward? How are you transforming the Democratic Party when you have all of the squad members in Congress endorsing Joe Biden? It goes on to say, support volunteer canvassers, text bankers, and phone bankers, create videos, send emails to the Justice Democrats email list, and answer help desk emails and any other related work involved that promotes Justice Democrats candidates and issues. Here's the board. Now there's Alexandra Rojas. She was mentioned in the previous article. She's the executive director. This is the one who came forward to praise Neera Tanden. There's Damon Drummer, who's a board member, and there's Nasim Thompson, who is a board member. But this has become a joke. Now, there was an article written a while back. This is on Socialist Alternative. This is by Aaron Brightwell. The State of the Squad, how AOC and House progressives failed to become change makers on the inside. Let's get into this. This is a really good article if you haven't seen it. This was written in March of 2022. I want you to hear what Aaron had to say. In 2018, on her first day in Washington, D.C. as the newly elected congressperson from NYC, Democratic Socialist AOC joined environmental activists as they staged a sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office in the Capitol building. The message was clear. AOC was not your ordinary establishment politician. All right. Now let's fast forward. AOC spent her first years in office under a Trump presidency. The Democrats controlled only the House and AOC was broadly untested. Then came the election of Joe Biden, a longtime consummate corporate Democrat. This posed a challenge to these progressive leaders in Washington. Would Bernie and AOC consistently oppose the Democratic establishment? Would AOC and the squad galvanize their base and use the slim Democratic margin in Congress to try to win concessions for working class people from the political establishment? Or would they fall in line behind Nancy Pelosi and the rest of Democratic power party structure? I want to highlight this part here about the Trump presidency because this is very, very important. When Justice Democrats first joined Congress, the first couple of members of the squad, we do have to remember that was during the time when Donald Trump was in office. So they were very bold and loud and vocal then. It's easy to do so when the president is a Republican. But what a lot of us noticed was that the moment that Joe Biden won the White House, they were not as vocal anymore. They were not as bold. They were not willing to push back on him, who is Democrat establishment, which was what they were assigned to do. They had one job, one mission at hand, to go in and push back against establishment Democrats. And once Joe Biden won, we saw that they were not going to do that. Let's go on. Alliance with the establishment. More than a year into Biden's presidency, Bernie, AOC, and the squad have been entirely unprepared to stand up for their program of a federal minimum wage, Medicare for all, free public college education, canceling student loan debt, and a Green New Deal. Now, it says here that they were unprepared, right? But on Justice Democrats' website, it says that they train their candidates to be prepared for this, right? To push back against the Democrat establishments. Instead of mobilizing ordinary people to fight for those enormously popular measures, they have abandoned their original goals that got them elected and formed an alliance with Biden to back his watered down agenda. That goes against what's on Justice Democrats' website. This strategy failed miserably, with serious consequences for working class people. The Democrats have failed to get any of their agenda through Congress, other than an extremely business-friendly and highly inadequate infrastructure bill. In addition to the existing crisis of healthcare, housing, student debt, the low-wage job economy, and the climate, working people also have to deal with skyrocketing cost of living and seemingly unending deadly pandemic. With midterm elections approaching and Biden's approval numbers having approached historic lows, the door is open for the Trump-dominated Republicans to make major gains. Already, the right has used this momentum to launch new attacks on women, LGBTQ, people in Republican-dominated states. And as we know, there wasn't a red wave, so to speak, but Republicans did take back the House. They go on to talk about the war against Ukraine. It says, aside from making a brief video explaining the real consequence of the U.S. and NATO declaring a no-fly zone, AOC approach on the war has been seriously lacking. She has signed onto a bipartisan letter to the president, which has no anti-war message and which actually leaves open the possibility of direct U.S. military intervention. Working class people didn't send AOC to Congress to get along with capitalist class representatives. Instead of developing a principled anti-war position, AOC has taken the path of least resistance. To her credit, Ilhan Omar, the squad member in the House from Minnesota, has voted against every hawkish pro-war measure, demonstrating a very principled internationalist approach in contrast to her colleagues. This is the important part here. It didn't have to be this way. The failure of Bernie and AOC to build a movement behind their original agenda was in no way predestined. Socialist Alternative explained how AOC could have responded to force the vote by embracing the working class activists who were looking to continue to fight for Medicare for all, regardless of who sat in the president's office. But she wasn't going to do that because she had already had a talking to from people like Nancy Pelosi who said, don't you go to that protest. Don't you go out there to that Medicare for all march. Don't you go out there with those activists. We have a Democrat in the White House now. And to that point, what I say is, then what was the point of Justice Democrats? If the point of Justice Democrats was just to confuse working class people and to go in Congress and to just get along with establishment Democrats and to vote with them almost 90% of the time anyway, there was no point for this organization to exist. And that's what I want people to understand. The reason why now you see this layoff that's happening at Justice Democrats and you hear the complaints about they're having difficulty fundraising is because the people that were put in office that came from that organization have not lived up to the promises that they made to working class people. They haven't lived up to the promises that they made to all the people who gave $5 and $10 when they didn't really have it to give to their campaigns. All the people that quit their jobs and phone banked and canvassed for those candidates. They didn't live up to any of their promises. They just basically became just another watered down, milk toast Democrat. So now when people hear the name Justice Democrats, it doesn't hold as much weight as it used to. People don't feel empowered to donate their last $10 or $5 to an organization that is producing a bunch of sellouts. And so what people have to understand, and I'm going to say it like this as clear as day, I believe that Justice Democrats was a grift. I believe that Justice Democrats, the organization, the moment that they decided to take billionaire money was headed downhill. I believe that any time that you have a candidate like AOC, and Zeynep has talked about this, you have a candidate like AOC and they tell the communications director, when you write my bio, say that I'm a bartender because that sounds better. The organization is a grift. Now, they raised all this money over the years. And what has this produced for working class people? Not a damn thing. You don't have $15 minimum wage. They didn't force the vote for Medicare for all. Where did all that money go? On their website, they tell you that they train the candidates to be able to fight back against Democrat establishment. Well, if they're so well trained, why is it not happening? And the nerve and the gall for Justice Democrats to continue to ask for money from the American people when they have not produced is disturbing. And these are the things I think that people really need to think about. People are laid off because they don't have the money that they had anymore. You see, it's really easy to fundraise for an organization like Justice Democrats when you have someone in power like a Donald Trump, when the president is on the right. Not as easy when you have someone in office who is a Democrat, Joe Biden, and people see all of a sudden all this vocal energy that these politicians, the squad, had when Trump was in office. All of a sudden, it's very subdued. Rashida Tlaib doesn't even talk the same anymore. When Donald Trump was in office, she said, we're going to impeach him. Now she talks like this. I would really like for Joe Biden to try to put forth measures to also do more for the American people. I saw her response to the State of the Union address. You can't tell me that was the same person that came in 2018. All of these people have succumbed to establishment pressure. They are no longer a part of the working class. And I'd even argue that they probably never really were a part of the working class when they ran in the first damn place. So the organization itself, it doesn't mean anything anymore. It has lost its purpose. And when an organization loses its purpose, people don't feel compelled to give them money. And people don't feel compelled to support it. Now it goes on to say, less than 4 years after she sat with the Sunrise Movement protesters, AOC went to the Global Climate Summit, not to join the youth climate protesters in the streets of Glasgow, but as a part of a U.S. congressional delegation led by, ironically, perhaps Nancy Pelosi. AOC, speaking at an official climate event, reassured the world that when we say that the United States is back, it's not just that we're back in the way that the United States was pursuing climate policy before. It is different. And I would argue that it is fundamentally a different approach. The approach that AOC was talking about from within the convention center at Glasgow was not the Green New Deal that AOC has sometimes championed, and which aims to get net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And that's supposed to be globally. AOC was actually talking about Biden's climate agenda, which was much more modest target and uses market incentives to inch closer to net zero goal without any of the transformative political potential of the Green New Deal. Let's go on down here. And this is the piece I really want to hone in on. The Green New Deal, you have to remember, came from the Green Party. AOC and Ed Markey took that and watered it down. And now they've gone from that to accepting the agenda that Biden proposed, which is even more watered down from that. This is why you can't do these changes within the Democratic Party. It is a corporate party. If you want a real Green New Deal, you need to look at the one that's on the Green Party's website. That's the real Green New Deal. This is why I continue to tell people you have to leave the Democratic Party. And we get into this piece. From climate to healthcare, student debt, and the federal minimum wage, progress on the program championed by Bernie Sanders and AOC is stalled. Not only that, but the right wing has gathered serious momentum in attacking women and LGBTQ people, despite broad popular support for abortion access and LGBTQ rights. There has been a massive vacuum of leadership in defending against right-wing attacks. Neither the old liberal women or LGBT groups nor the left of the Democratic Party, including AOC and the squad, have used their platforms to galvanize people to fight back. The absence of a sustained, serious movement in opposing the Texas abortion ban last September has meant that the right wing dominated the Supreme Court is very likely emboldened to overturn Roe v. Wade entirely. And as we know, that happened. Let's go on to this part right here. Oh, I think I was going to the last part. Oh, here we go. As we have raised countless times, if Bernie Sanders had used either his presidential campaign to call for an independent, working class political party, millions would have met that call. Such a party could have been used to organize a fight against attacks from the right and to build political support for the labor struggles that have burst onto the scene. That did not happen. In fact, it ended up being a city councilor from Seattle named Shama Sawant leading that labor movement. That's why Shama Sawant is doing this, because this is what Bernie Sanders was supposed to do. Bernie and the squad, all of them, they got comfortable really quick. And that includes Cori Bush, by the way. And people tell me Cori Bush was homeless. She had to live in her car. She ain't living there now. She got comfortable too. Of course, the opportunity is not lost and the urgency for a political alternative to the Democrats has only grown. The left needs to learn the lessons from the collapse of Bernie and AOC's legitimacy and immediately end its practice of supporting lesser evil Democrats. We need to run independent, working class candidates across the country as the first step to building a new political party. Justice Democrats is having difficulty financially because Justice Democrats has failed. And it didn't just fail as an organization. More importantly, it failed working class people. And I'll say this again. You cannot go around this country asking working class people for money and for help when you know a lot of them don't have it to give, but they do it because they believe in you. And then you abandon an entire class of people and you expect them to still support you. You cannot do that. This has all become a joke, a big, fat joke. That's why they had to lay people off. That's why they're having financial troubles. That's why people don't want to donate to them anymore. Sebastian says sellouts asking for gasp money from the working class whom they sold out to. Tia says the point of Justice Democrats was to put the people to sleep and keep them sitting on their hands. There you go. And I want to know where all that money went. I remember when Kyle Kalinske and Human Report, when they first announced this, you guys know they were able to raise like $1 million. I think it was in 24 hours. They were able to raise like $1 million. Where'd all that money go? You know what we could have done with that money? That $1 million? We could have built clinics in communities that don't have hospitals. We could have fed people. We could have clothed people. $1 million down the drain. What a fucking joke.